All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. Chief Pittman, Bruce, who else? We have group here. I think Libby and Brian might be connecting in. Just wait a second here.
Jeremy.
Was Jeremy coming in too?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Enrique.
Hi.
So with Jeremy, I've got to, hey Libby. So with Jeremy, I've got to do approve the agenda by roll call, right?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Joe Grouse, Vice Chair of the Finance Committee. Let me call to order the Finance Committee meeting for Monday, January 9th, 2023. It's 4 p.m. Remind everybody that we're being audio and video recorded. And I guess the first action item is approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Go around the Finance Committee. Stephen? Aye. Peter?
Aye.
Chris? Aye. Peter McEachern?
Aye.
Jeremy, can you hear me? Okay, we have
Can you hear
Jeremy.
me? Sorry, guys, the mute wasn't off.
Sorry, Jeremy, I need your aye for approving the agenda.
Aye.
Thank you. Public comment. I love the way Denise does this. I guess we open the meeting for public comment. Is there any public comment not related to the items on the agenda? Quick count to 5. All right, we'll close public comment. I don't remember. Do we have minutes from January 15th? Were they distributed? They were.
Yeah, they were.
Has everybody had a chance to read them?
December 15th.
Some of them.
I haven't read them, but I wasn't here, so I couldn't make any comments. Same here, you too.
All right, why don't we postpone that, Maria, to the next meeting? All right, then our primary item for discussion this afternoon is item 6, discussion of citizen warrant article number 3, an amendment proposed for chapter 98 of the town code regarding motorized vehicles. Bruce, you're online. This is your article. I thought what we would do in the interest of time is if you would kind of recap, your issues with why you're proposing this article, and then we can ask for some comment from Chief Pittman from the police department. And I don't know if we were going to have anybody from the bicycling group, but if they do show up, they may have some comments as well. Bruce, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I had sent out a bullet points to the committee, and I just want to review the points for the sake of the YouTube recording for viewers who may in the future be watching this. Chapter 98, motorized passenger devices, was adopted in 2004. It was created almost 2 decades ago for the safety of the citizens and visitors to protect the users of sidewalks and other public ways from motorized personal vehicles. At the time, the concern was only about the few devices that were prevalent at the time. Motorized scooters, 2-seated vehicles, motorized skateboards, segways, and other similar devices. And the chapter refers to those as personal motorized passenger devices. Since that time, 2 important changes to the community have developed. One, more types of motorized personal devices have been developed in the years since Chapter 98 was adopted. And this basically as a result of recently advanced technologies for more powerful electric batteries. Therefore, the chapter's list of devices is in need of being updated to be most currently inclusive. Of Nantucket's more than 250 miles of roads, there are 31 miles of what the town and its website is now calling side paths, what we used to know as bike paths, multi-use paths. And there's a definition in the town's website as of August. A side path is a paved linear path that is wider than a sidewalk Side paths support walking, bicycling, and other mobility needs, including baby strollers, wheelchairs, rollerblades, and they're separated typically from traffic by a landscape panel to improve safety and follow the trajectory of the roadway. In some cases, the side paths deviate a little bit from the roadways, and they're often referred to as shared use paths, multi-use paths, bike paths. The proposed Article 3 makes no changes to the existing language. It does not delete any existing language. It does not rewrite Chapter 98. It only addresses two things: making the current list of motorized vehicles and devices that are not supposed to be on sidewalks, and two, equating bike paths, side paths, shared paths, whatever you want to call them, to sidewalks by amending the language of Chapter 98 to include them too. This is to afford the same level of safety that we provide to the users of side paths. The list of motorized personal vehicles proposed to be included now in Chapter 98 are electric powered scooters, those are two-seated vehicles, motorized gas powered, and electric powered mopeds, those are single-seated vehicles, motorized or electric powered one-wheel roller boards. These are balance boards with one wheel. They've got a maximum speed of up to 22 miles an hour or more. Electric powered self-balancing unicycles and scooter boards that can reach 22 miles or more. Gas powered or electric powered razors. These are boards with handlebars and throttle speed controls. They have speeds up to 20 miles an hour, and some have a top speed of 40 miles an hour. Bicycles that have been retrofitted with electric powered conversion systems, gasoline powered bicycles, and electric powered bicycles. Now, there are essentially three types of electric powered bicycles designated as levels 1, 2, and 3. They have speeds up to 5 power levels that range from level 1, which is a pedal assistance speed, up to 13 miles an hour, the middle range P3 up to 25, and some have a P5 with speeds over 40 miles an hour. And because it's not possible to differentiate these several levels of bicycles by simply looking at the frames, it's impractical to try to create separate categories for acceptable use on the side paths. No business would be adversely affected by Article 3. Even bicycle touring businesses will still be able to use the side paths unless they convert to powered bicycles, in which case they could still use turnoffs for the periodic stops. I've reached out to and met with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee in November. The Mattocket Conservation Association has endorsed the article's intent. The article was discussed at the Civic League's annual president's meeting and received endorsement. Town Council, Chief Pittman, and Town Administration reviewed the proposed article before it was submitted. There are no additional costs anticipated to the town associated with the article. Enforcement continues as passive, similar to excessive noise, outdoor lighting, things like that. I provided the committee with my responses to the Finance Committee's warrant article questionnaire, as well as the specifications for the proposed vehicles to be updated. And copies of those were provided, and I think I sent them out again the other day.
Yeah, you did.
There have been reports of accidents where people walking, bicycling, strolling with baby strollers, using side paths have been affected, struck, and injured by motorized personal devices. Capturing photos of these instances, as has been suggested, is impractical because the violator is long gone before we can get a cell phone cameras out and brought into camera mode. Motorized devices such as scooters, mopeds, e-bikes are legally allowed to use the roads. Now, most people walk between 3 and 3.5 miles an hour. The average user of a non-motorized bicycle, a pedal bicycle, travels between 9 and 12 miles an hour, and I provided you with documentation on this. The motorized personal devices proposed to be included in Chapter 98 travel silently at top speeds between 22 and 40 miles an hour, and those are well within the speed limits of island roads. And I've given you documentation on this with pictures and all that stuff. The motorized personal devices proposed to be amended are already using the island's roads, whether there's a side path or not. According to the DPW records, there are more than 250 miles of road in Nantucket. Only 31 of those roads have side paths. So there are more than 200 miles of roads on Nantucket with no side paths that these vehicles are already using to get to and from their homes or wherever they're going to get to the side paths. Now, I had previously provided a copy of a 400-page study by Amsterdam University Press called Cycling Pathways that addressed motorized bicycle use on Netherlands' separate bike paths. Netherlands has the highest density of non-motorized pedal-powered bicycles in all of Europe. The study concluded that motorized devices should not share bicycle paths. And I sent you a copy of that 400-page document, but I also referred you to the 4 or 5 pages where those conclusions are set forth. And I'd like to also bring out, before I wrap up here, in New York City Central Park, where on weekends the park is turned over for walking, bicycling, pedestrians using baby strollers, wheelchairs, and rollerblades. There's one cross street for taxis and buses and one north-south street for taxis and buses. But all personal motorized devices, including e-bikes, are prohibited to use Central Park while these other activities are going on for safety's sake. So basically, that's why I was proposing this update to Chapter 98, to bring it current with the current list of these motorized vehicles and to equate side paths, bike paths, whatever you want to call them, walking paths, with sidewalks for the safety and health of the people using them. So thank you. That's basically my reasoning, and I am here to see if there are any questions or comments that I could refer back to. Thank you.
Great. Well, Bruce, thank you. What I thought we would do before letting the finance committee ask some questions is I might ask Chief Pittman. Chief, could you, if you have some thoughts or observations on adding these additional motorized vehicles to the list of prohibited vehicles for bike paths, or any other observations on this article, would you mind sharing them with us? And then we might ask you some questions too.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, this is one of those situations where there's a problem that doesn't have a solution, and an easy solution. While we might remove these items from the bike paths and the shared paths of the island, what we're going to do is, what this article will do is effectively put them into the roadways, where many of them are now in certain roadways, but I'm just picturing these bikes being on Matticat Road, Milestone Road, Pulpus Road, what kind of traffic congestion and problems that'll cause in the summer. Not to mention the enforcement of this is going to be add to the burden of the police department dealing with complaints about this. It's going to be a tough one to enforce on the at least initially, until people understand it. I think honestly, it'll require some installation of signage in order to keep that portion of it manageable. Every week there's new visitors here, And, we can't, education campaigns typically don't work on Nantucket. You're going to have adequate warning and notice for those types of things.
Chief, if I could just stick a question in here, any anecdotal or, more organized data on bicycling versus pedestrian kind of accidents that we've experienced over the last couple of summers, either on the bike paths or on roadways in general?
Yeah, I mean, they are a problem on the bike paths. I mean, I myself darn near clipped one the other day down at South Shore and Blueberry. It's kind of a weird intersection across the bike path there, and a gentleman riding his electric bike, probably I'm going to guess 25 miles an hour, didn't even bother to slow down crossing over Blueberry. And by the time I saw him, I'd already stopped and started forward. And it's very discombobulating to people on the bike path when they come up behind you. So, it is a problem. I agree with Bruce on that 100%. I think the solution is going to generate a significant number of alternative problems. Like I said, congestion on the roads, somebody riding on the road 25 mile an hour in a 40 mile an hour speed zone is going to create some traffic rage, road rage situations. But we're just switching one problem for another, I think. But, I don't know what the correct answer is.
Great, thank you. Gentlemen, anybody else want to lob some questions in there?
Can I?
Sure, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chief, about the bikes going past you, et cetera, but I also feel that the professional bike riders on the island, or the guys that truly do it as a sport, they go past you at 45 miles an hour. And that's pretty scary too, and they don't care. They just go right through the lights, right through the intersections, right through the stop signs. It's interesting. Would it make more sense, George and Chief, if we did a more of an enforcement situation where no powered vehicle was allowed on the bike path without front and rear lights, without a helmet? I'm sure helmets are required now. Maybe we have a 16-year-old license that you have to have when you rent the bikes, something like that, rather than outright outlawing them on the bike paths.
I mean, enforcement is good to some level, but honestly, I'm not sure who would do it. We've got 3 police officers working a shift, and in the summertime, they're going from call to call to call. They're not going to have time to be enforcing a bicycle without a light on a bike path. We already have that problem. We get complaints at night all the time, but the officers just don't have time to deal with that. Same with speeding on the roadways. We just don't have time and enough officers to adequately enforce the speed limits on the island. It's
So
large.
based on that, if you pulled them off of the bike paths and put them on the roads, it would compound the problem even greater.
I think you're right. It's a problem with no good solution.
Yeah.
Joe, if I may,
Sure, Bruce, go ahead.
thank you. These points are all well and good and well intended. The rental motor scooters that we deal with and see on the roads, those are regulated right now at about 20 miles an hour. Of course, if you have your own private one, they can go up to 40, but we've all been engaged on the road behind a moped rider with, 2-3 people on it, and we have to slow down to pass them. Mattocket speed limit is 25 miles an hour. Portions of Mattocket Road are 30 miles an hour, well within the range of the speeds of these electric bikes. And yeah, it's a pain in the neck to try to pass them, especially when they're riding 2 or 3 abreast. We all deal with this. And the intent on enforcement of Chapter 98 remains the way it's already written. It's basically passive, recognizing the difficulties. I'll give you 2 quick examples. I was hit on Mattocket bike path by someone who hit me pretty hard on an electric bike and just kept going and looked over his shoulder and went, "Oh, sorry." I couldn't have gotten a picture or called a policeman or even written down a license plate number if they had even been registered. The other thing that was basically the driving force here was that my young granddaughter was knocked down by an e-bike, cracked her chin. By the time we got her up, stopped the bleeding, the bike rider was long gone, and we didn't do anything other than get her to the doctor to get 2 stitches. These are problems, and it is difficult to try to regulate it. As to signage, the DPW's got a sign shop. They can put signs up, but you know what? There are bad actors and good actors, and unfortunately, to protect the public, sometimes the good actors become the victim of the bad actors. And the idea is to protect the public and the safety of the public, not to make it convenient for the good actors who want to use the bike paths instead of being on the roads. So thank you.
I have a question. This is Jeremy Bloomer, for maybe the chief or you, Bruce. We talk about passive enforcement. Let's say we pass this. What kind of, penalty is there? Is there a fine? What is it? I recognize the police don't have the time, but are we talking about a $50 ticket or a $2,000 ticket?
Jeremy, it's a good question. I don't envision there being any fine because you're not going to catch the perpetrators. I envision the public eventually coming around to understanding that motorized vehicles don't belong on the side paths, bike paths, and they're legal to be on the roads. And yes, they will probably create a little bit of congestion or more congestion during the heavy months of the summer, the tourist months, 2-3 months in the summertime. But I don't see a policeman being able to stop a motorized bike that's riding on the bike path. Exempted from the article are the police ATVs, emergency vehicles, motorized wheelchairs, and that kind of thing. But the intent is to educate the public the same way we're trying to do with fertilizer use, the plastic ban, and some of these other issues. I don't envision that a fine is going to be effective in deterring this use. It's a matter of basically telling the people who are renting these bikes and who are using these devices, you don't belong on the side paths and the bike paths.
So Bruce, let me ask Chief a question. Chief, there's a sort of a moral suasion cultural question, but in certain cities in this world, people don't jaywalk. And then in New York City, we all know that it's a public sport. How do, what in your experience have been any mechanisms that can help, drive the public good to a desired behavior? Or is it just way too difficult?
I really don't know the answer to that as it relates to the bikes. Because what I see happening is occasionally, for instance, it's well known you can't drive mopeds on the bike paths. That's the law. They inform when they rent them, they inform people that, but every once in a while, and actually more often than we get calls because somebody's riding a moped down a bike path, and the reason they're doing it is because they got scared to death riding in the roadway. I anticipate that'll happen a lot with these e-bikes being in the roadway. Motorists come up behind them and tailgate them, and whatever. It's just going to be a mess in that respect. So I don't know what level of passive enforcement. And to answer an earlier question, the fine's $25 if you do write somebody a ticket.
What would happen if you made the fine quite dramatic and then the world learned of that?
Well, the most you could make it would be $300, I believe, by law. But then you got to look at the age of the violators. We're dealing with some pretty young kids riding these e-bikes out here. These aren't all adults, and we're dealing with a lot of people from different cultures riding these e-bikes now that they can't get driver's licenses, or they couldn't get driver's licenses, and they got e-bikes. And There's language barriers, there's all kinds of other issues involved.
I think it's a matter of public education, getting people actively involved. We hear stories all the time about around the school, these kids using the e-bikes and zooming in and out. It's dangerous.
Mhm.
And it's just an involvement of educating the public. And someone mentioned putting up some signs. You know, the DPW's got a sign shop. They could put up signs, but you know, there are stop signs on all these bike paths too, as they cross roads that are basically used as decoration. The town even has, Facebook even has a special website for Nantucket's dangerous bike paths, where they go into things like signage being ignored, low-hanging tree branches making it dangerous, and things like that. So this is not a unique situation. This is something that we as a community need to do to equate the bike paths with sidewalks so that the public eventually knows that these motorized vehicles don't belong operating on the bike paths and sidewalks. Because as it stands right now, the devices I listed to you are not included in Chapter 98. So they could be actually used on the sidewalks.
Bruce, this is Stephen Morey. I am familiar with the incidents you're talking about with the students at school, leaving school or going to school, zooming in and out of traffic. I believe the complaints were based on people zooming in and out of vehicle traffic on the roads and how unsafe that was. So now you're talking about implementing new regulations which would require them to be on the roads, where it seems obvious to me that an e-bike or any bike hitting a person, that's a problem. A car hitting an e-bike, that's a death. We're creating a situation where the likelihood of a much greater casualty is greater than what we have right now. And that's a statement. The second part of my comment here is a question, which was in your opening statement. You said you reached out to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. What was their feedback?
I met with them I reached out to them and we met in November. We went over this. They appreciated the need for the article. They had some of the same concerns you did. They didn't reach a conclusion. What they decided at the end of the presentation was at a subsequent meeting, they would discuss this further. They have not calendared a meeting since that November meeting, nor have they published the minutes of that meeting. But there was interest in it. They were concerned about, hey, look, there are certain e-bikes that don't go as fast as other e-bikes, so maybe they should be excluded. And then the question was, well, how can you determine by looking at them which are which? There was a concern they mentioned about, you know, there are regular bikes that have pedal assisting, and you know, they're not electric all the time. So maybe they should not be included. And then some of them said, yeah, but they're still electric and they can go, you know, 15, 20 miles an hour silently. So these are complicated issues. But the intent of the article is just to update the list of the motorized personal vehicles that shouldn't be on sidewalks, and then to equate sidewalks with side paths, bike paths, whatever you want to say. And not every vehicle listed, by the way, Stephen, is a bicycle. There's
I understand that, but your examples, the three examples about at the school weaving in and out of traffic and the two collisions that occurred to you and I believe you said your granddaughter, those are e-bikes, and those are the most common type of personal motorized vehicle on the list. So that's the one that I brought up. You know, you're saying that enforcement is going to be very difficult. Maybe it's impossible. Why can't we say certain types of these personal motorized devices can go on bike paths if they are governed to a certain speed? You know, I think you said the average person bikes up to 9 miles an hour. I don't believe that's true. I think it's closer to 15 or 18 miles an hour. If these things are governed at 20, you know, it seems to me those are safer for the user and for the public at large on a side path than they are on a busy street. And I say busy street because that's where, by and large, we've built bike paths. You know, we built bike paths to get pedestrians and smaller vehicles like bikes, and I would say like e-bikes, off of the roads, because it's unsafe for them. It's unsafe for everyone if they're using the road.
Well, that's where I tried to make the point that of our 250 miles of roads, there's only 31 that have bike paths. And
Those
As
are the
to-
ones where the car accidents are most likely. That's why we
I'm
built.
not
the
aware
sidewalks.
of any e-bike accidents with cars, although I'm sure they've been hit and brushed and whatever, or injury bikes, accidents. I'm certainly aware of e-bike and rollerboard accidents on the bike paths.
But we are all aware of people who have been hit by cars on bikes and mopeds. Mopeds are, Chief Pittman probably doesn't have the statistics, but we know that there have been serious car crashes with mopeds that have resulted in death.
I'm aware of that one. I remember.
So,
seeing that.
yeah, so if we put the bikes on the road and there's more, now, so now we have more vehicles traveling at approximately the same speed. Sometimes without helmets, sometimes with people who are younger than could even get a license to operate a moped, certainly younger than could operate a car. They don't have that training. And now we're putting them out there with vehicles on the roads. It just doesn't seem wise.
I understand what you're saying, and it's a good point. But these bicycles and e-bikes and other rollerboards and racers with, throttles and whatever on them, they're already on our roads. So are you going to ban them
But
from
they're
roads
but
to
they're
save
not on the most,
people?
they're not on the most dangerous roads, the ones where we've decided to invest the money to build the side paths, because those were the most dangerous roads. So now you're talking about putting them in the most dangerous places, the highest speed roads, the ones with the most blind corners.
Well, I would-
Pulpus, Milestone, Surfside, those are dangerous thoroughfares.
And the
I would
roads people
welcome
need
any
to go on,
suggestion
go where
that
they're
would
going.
help deal with that.
Stephen,
Go ahead.
Can I just ask a quick
yeah,
question?
Chris, yeah.
I'm just on the part about equating the sidewalks with, are bicycles allowed on the sidewalks currently?
No.
Except in the downtown area, they are.
But they're not in the downtown area. When you talk about this equating them, would this then allow bicycles onto the downtown sidewalks, Bruce?
It does not change chapter 28. According to chapter 28, it addresses personal motorized devices, not regular bikes. And it says they're not supposed to be on public ways, sidewalks, parks, playgrounds, or beaches without express permission from the town. So it doesn't address, this chapter does not address use of what I'll call pedal-powered bicycles.
Okay, so this, what you've written doesn't put bikes on the sidewalks then?
I am not proposing that, no. I'm only dealing with chapter 98.
Okay, thanks.
I think based on all the discussions we've had, that enforcement isn't the issue. It's the danger of putting these electric powered vehicles, and they're all going to be electric. There won't be any more motorized ones going forward other than electrics. And whether that would be more dangerous. So I think that the danger factor is way, way more important than the enforcement factor. Because as we know, the enforcement factor is very difficult. By the way, there are three classifications of electric bikes, and only one of them has a throttle. The other two, when you're not pedaling, you get no assist.
Peter, any have any questions?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Bruce, I'm curious, did you consider other ways you might sort of improve safety on the multi-use paths? Proposing a reduction in, speed limits on the bike path, signage, center lane lines that would, signs that would tell pedestrians as well as cyclists, be alert, stay, I don't know, just, sort of things that, might induce some of the people riding these vehicles as well as walking with their grandchildren, to be more alert.
Yes, we did consider these and wanted to try to incorporate them. For example, you can have a dedicated bike path or lane, I'm sorry, I misspoke, a dedicated bike lane on these 8-foot wide side paths. And people using them would know, oh, I shouldn't push my baby stroller in that lane. But how do you enforce that use? Signage, yes, signage is a good idea. I'm not sure how effective it would be, but it would be very informative and raise a level of consciousness as to the safety issues. The other aspects of this public information sessions, trying to get for example, there are several businesses on the island that rent electric bicycles. If they could register the bicycles and have distinctive license plates on them that might help someone that was hit to see, at least catch the glimpse of a license plate. Those are all issues that we've tried to come to grips with. The essence of this article is to update Chapter 98 to include these new motorized vehicles and to create the side paths with sidewalks. Enforcement, as I said, right now it's passive and it's probably going to stay that way. There just aren't enough police officers or CSOs around to stand on the bike paths trying to pick out what's an electric bike, who's got an electric rollerboard, which level of electric bike do they have, a level 1, 2, or 3, and how fast were they going? It's very problematic. The idea is to enhance the safety and protection of the public that are walking, strolling, pushing bike baby strollers on these paths. That's the only intent here. It's not meant to provide congestion or more congestion. I mean, we've already got bikes, e-bikes, mopeds and whatnot on the roads. And for the most part, I've not seen too many issues of road rage where these people will run off the roads. I know that people get upset because instead of doing 40 miles an hour, I can only do 20. But you're only doing that for like 6 miles. It doesn't change your trip by more than 2 or 3 minutes. But you're right, it's complicated. And to answer your question, we have considered these issues, and it's been suggested by other people we've spoken with that, hey, just take out your camera and take a picture of the violator. It's not that easy to do.
Right. Well, any other questions from Finance Committee? Libby or Chief Pittman, do you have any closing thoughts or anything you'd like to add at this stage of the conversation?
I don't know if Bill wants to add anything, but I would say that when Bruce first gave this to us, we didn't have too many comments other than I think what we said was this is going to be very difficult to enforce. Enforcement is a real problem. We are hoping to get together a video, a bike safety, which would include all of these devices video that is intended to be issued before this summer, which hopefully will be kind of an edgy video that will be clear as to what is and isn't really appropriate for the bike paths. So that is in the works.
Libby, do you have any idea what percentage of the town employees use an electric vehicle to get to work?
No,
I mean, rough, is it 5%, 10%?
probably
there-
less than 5.
Less?
I'd say less than 5.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, which I was going to touch on, you mentioned the education effort. The school has a very serious problem going on with students riding e-bikes to school. They've actually banned them from campus, but they still have an ongoing problem. So, I mean, the school can't even get an education through to its own students that is making a difference. I don't know how we would do it to an entire transient community. Just
So,
different.
so Bill, students are riding to school on electric bikes and obviously not obeying the rules of the sidewalks, roads, or bike paths that they need to ride on.
Correct.
All right, well, Bruce, I have just one more comment, and it's gonna sound terrible, but I do, one thing that sort of bothered me about your documents was the equation of the multi-use paths to sidewalks, and it strikes me that pathways that the town built over the last 30 years to help get people to the beaches and other parts of the island that were basically meant for bicycles. Now we're sort of more worried about protecting pedestrians, not that I'm against safety, but so we're sort of squeezing the bicycles, if you will, off the path and out onto the street. I recognize that they're electric powered and faster, but I just think this is a tough thing to parse in terms of what's the balance between safety on the bike path, safety off the bike path, the differing speeds of these various vehicles. So I think this is a tough one to try to sort of see it clearly and come to a conclusion. Obviously, we're going to have to do that. But.
Well, I agree with you, that for years, we've called these things the Mattocket bike path, for example. And more recently, they've been called, well, they're multi-use paths. And they're now on the town website. They're defined as side paths. If you go to the town website, there's a website that lists all of the bike paths. And there are little maps on them showing how many miles, how long it takes to ride, the degree of difficulty, what interesting things are along the way. And then it summarizes it by calling them side paths. And I even gave you the link to the page in the town website so you could see this. So things evolve and people are using these paths for more than just bicycling, obviously, as you mentioned. And it's a changing dynamic. And I think that's why updating Chapter 98 is important, to bring it current to the technical advances that we've experienced and to equate it with sidewalks, because that's basically what they are now. They're sidewalks so people can get off the bus and walk to the Mattocket Beach. People are walking on them. So it is a difficult situation, but things are evolving. And that's what I'm trying to do, develop a discussion point. The article, any article can be improved. Your suggestions when you recommend this article, you can make some edits. But the point is updating it so that the current motorized personal vehicles is a current list. And we're not just talking about e-bikes, obviously. There are razor bikes that have handlebars and throttles that can go up to 25 miles an hour. And as to the question of where did the speed limit for pedal bikes come from, that came from that Danish study where they studied hundreds of thousands of bike riders and they came up with that average pedal bike speed. And that's why I referenced it.
Well, it's also the most congested road.
Yeah. Well, I guess Bruce, I'd like to thank you for submitting your article. You always have well-researched and well-documented proposals for the finance committee and town meeting. I do appreciate it and commend your focus on traffic safety and pedestrian safety. I think we can sort of close this discussion and I leave it to the finance committee here. Do we want to are we ready to have a discussion on this? And would you like to vote on it today, or is this something we would like to put on a shelf and think about for a while?
Think about it. I think we need to get a little bit more research, because the research that we've been given so far, I don't think is really relevant. We
Well,
really,
I think we can at least continue the discussion for a little while.
Yeah, I think we should try, I think Denise was sort of hoping we would vote on it today. I'm not sure I'm that optimistic, but,
Sure.
anyway, Bruce, you're welcome to hang on. Chief Pittman, I thank you for your attendance. If you want to, I'm sure you have other things to attend to, so you're welcome to bail out. And Libby and Brian, you're still there somewhere, right? So,
Libby's here. Yeah. Oh, I see nods. There's Brian.
okay. I guess part of my concern here is that you can't deny that it would be safer on the bike paths to get more faster vehicles sort of out of the traffic flow someplace else. The problem is, I think, as you were, if you take these particular devices and stick them on the roadway,
You make them less.
you make the roadway less safe.
Yeah.
And some of these, like, the razor boards and stuff, people don't wear helmets, they zip, I don't know.
And they're not required to learn the rules of the road before they get on. And I understand the point that almost everyone, when they start or end their journey, they're on a road that doesn't have a side path. But those are typically the smaller streets. Right. Those are the streets where speed is low.
and this is a growth industry. I've been just looking at it for my own interest, and what we see now is nothing compared to what 5 years from now is gonna be.
Well,
On the road.
if we don't do anything about it, I think one of the telling bits of information from Bruce's research was that Central Park closes itself off on the weekends. Central Park, New York has thousands of joggers, runners, walkers, baby strollers, and cyclists, and they basically banned the power assisted two-wheel vehicles.
So how does
True enough,
that?
but people aren't using those roads in Central Park to get from point A to point B as transportation,
Right.
right? They're going there for a recreational opportunity, so it's very different than.
I think that's a good point, is about equity. We haven't talked about it yet, but buying a car is a luxury. It seems like a necessity here on the island. But it's not something that everybody can afford to do, and getting from home to work more and more is, this type of device is becoming something that you need to do. Not everybody lives within a mile of where they work.
Maria does it today. She gets to work.
Not today, but.
Or usually.
Yes.
Well, but that, okay, that's fine, but then, people have to obey the rules of the road on the roads that they're riding on, and part of the problem that Bruce and his article and complaint, if you will, points out is not everybody on the bike path, whether they're, and I don't think it's necessarily always electric,
Right.
I can ride my bike for short distances, like 20 minutes an hour. So there are cyclist issues and traffic issues and people making stupid decisions to pass when they shouldn't.
Yeah.
So part of it is sort of road safety and road etiquette.
I agree.
Isn't the root issue speed? Because if someone's on an electric bike or a Hoover, or there's going to be some new device created we don't even know about that'll be on there. If they were doing 12 miles an hour, we wouldn't be having these discussions. But the issue is how fast these devices go. And so knowing that these things are going to only increase, and they're going to be magnetic hoverboards of some year in the future that we don't even know about. And the issue is we say we can't enforce it because we can't afford to enforce it. We say that education doesn't really work. And we don't want to create additive, dangerous situations on the road. But and those are all good points, but the real issue is speed on the bike paths. It's not, we are almost should be agnostic to walking, running, or the vehicle. It should be how fast they go, shouldn't we?
I think speed is part of it, Jeremy, but I can tell you, I mean, the 2 or 3 bad bike accidents that I've either had or just missed having riding on the bike path on Nantucket. I haven't been going that fast. It's because the people coming the other direction weren't obeying the rules of the road and were riding 3 abreast and you have. You know, you
Yeah.
come around a curve and I'm doing 15 miles an hour and all of a sudden I've got. 20 yards to figure out whether I'm going into the fence or the bushes or hitting these guys head on and. So it's.
So then I totally understand it and agree. So then really we get back to my jaywalking question. We all know certain cities in this world, the population at large behaves and does not jaywalk at all. And then you go to Manhattan and, it's national sport to jaywalk. So really we're talking about what is the culture in Nantucket we need on these bike paths? And how do you get that? Do we wave the white flag and say it's impossible? Or are there educational enforcement, other things that we can do? I don't know the answer to that. But it seems to me we're kind of getting around the edges of all of a growing problem, and we don't really have an ability to deal with the root issue.
Bad behavior.
Well, I mean, I think it's just, look, too many people and not enough space going too many different speeds. Right.
Right.
And you push on any part of the problem
Correct.
just shows up somewhere else. So I'm very sympathetic to what Bruce has brought to the table. I just think you move one problem here to over there because the root cause is too many people, not enough space.
Well,
too many different speeds.
we could.
I think that's the whole warrant. That's everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
There's too many people going too many different speeds, in a smaller area.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So could you propose 20-mile-an-hour speed limits? Could you propose?
Well, you
You
can't
can't
enforce-
enforce this, but I mean, you could say, you could have signs that it's 20-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Right.
If you try to create a
You could
cultural enforce it, you could enforce it by proposing a bylaw that's saying none of these, what is it? Great level 3 electric bikes and, anything that goes faster than 20 miles an hour is not permitted on Nantucket streets, whatever.
Yeah, it's a balloon or a nip of
And you could say no throttles. With throttles, you can go without pedal. That's where it's dangerous.
I mean, that's one way. You could build.
Another way to do it too is financial. Just sort of thinking out loud here, but let's say you had the $300 fine, and I know the police are never going to enforce it. But let us say, for example, someone gets into an accident and then there's going to be a civil lawsuit and their insurance company is not going to pay for anything because they broke the law. I know that's a little complicated, but if Nantucket outlaws these things or requires a governor and then has some mechanism that if you didn't have that, then in any civil litigation, you're really going to get hurt. That's the whole reason there's a tort industry that exists.
With the transient population, how would anybody even know?
Yeah.
You could widen the bike paths, put in another lane.
Put in electric bike paths.
You can put.
But
a-
then you get induced demand. You get the problem. There was an article in the Times this week about Los Angeles and how you get what's called induced demand. If you widen the roads, all you do is attract more people.
Well, I think getting more people on the bike path would be a good thing. I think anybody who's driven around the island.
You had pedestrian lanes
Yeah.
and wheeled vehicle lanes. I mean,
Yeah.
In certain places, like on Milestone, we could easily put it, it's expensive, but we could easily put it in more lanes, but that's very expensive.
or passing zones.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of a thorny problem because I think I think Bruce has identified a real issue, but I'm not particularly wild about the solution.
I think Bruce has identified an issue. I don't know how real it is because nobody knows how real it is. Nobody has any data about it. I do know that somebody was on a moped and was killed by a car. And these are essentially more mopeds that we're going to put on the roads when they have another place to be. I've never heard of an electric bike killing a person on Nantucket side paths. So for me, one public good outweighs the other.
Oh, by the way, just on that point, and last time you guys were in Manhattan, but you know how they put in all the bike paths in Manhattan? Well, what they're used for are for the delivery services. And the guys go 40 miles an hour the wrong way. And everyone who lives in Manhattan these days knows you got to look both ways. You're going to get killed by a delivery bicycle.
DoorDash.
Yeah, that's actually the case in Amsterdam too. They have, the number of bicycles per square mile in Amsterdam is off the charts, and when you hear the little jing jing, you better get out of the way because the bike's coming at you.
Like throw it in the water.
All right, whatever I feel like, you wanna,
Well, I don't know what protocol is here. Have you closed the public hearing? I see Bruce has had his hand up for a while.
oh, I'm sorry. Bruce, go. We didn't mean to lock you out.
That's okay, thank you. Just two comments. You know, someone was throwing around, 20 miles an hour is, not a bad speed, and anything over that. Getting hit by an e-bike going 20 miles an hour is the equivalent of being hit by an NFL linebacker. It's a pretty impactful thing. And if you say you're not aware of anyone being hit on the bike path, I can give you two personal experiences, which I've already shared with you. The other thing that I raised to town council is that without some sort of a restriction, is the town then becoming liable for allowing high-speed personal devices that can go up to 40 miles an hour to be on the side paths, which are intended for pedestrians as well as strollers and others, as well as regular bike users? And his answer was, well, that's what we have insurance for. So one of the things we considered was, in the absence of updating Chapter 98, are we creating a liability issue for the town if someone is seriously injured because the town does not have a regulation saying these motorized vehicles don't belong on the bike paths or side paths? The bike paths were intended for non-powered bicycles. So I just wanted to toss those out because those are very interesting comments that were made.
Thank you.
Well, Bruce, it would be good if you could, I don't know if there'd be some way to figure out in your research, how to use the insurance companies to drive this, where people are required to have personal insurance before they can have one of these things, and get the insurance companies to really focus people on, if there's ever a problem, it's extremely expensive for them.
Well,
It's
you'd
kind
have to
of a-
license them and register them in order to do that. And when you
No,
register, you prove you have insurance.
I recognize it's a complicated thing, but it is, you hit people in their pocketbooks and it works.
Everything's not money. And I think we're not talking about money, we're talking about lives. And I think that's really what's concerning us now. I mean, we can raise the fees as high as we want. We can make signs as big as we want, but it's really, we have to do what's best for the people that are using these facilities. And the fact that we have new people every single week makes it even more difficult, compounds the problem.
So I just came back from Florida, and there's a lot of golf carts down there. There's street legal golf carts, and then there's non-street legal golf carts. And street legal means you've got directional, and you've got a license plate, and you've got headlights and seat belts, and you can go a certain speed so that you can keep up with the flow of traffic. And there's some of those, and there's the Moke brand ones that you see around Nantucket sometimes. But they can only, they've got special low speed plates because they can only go on certain roads. And those things I think can all go 25 or 30 miles an hour. That's what you have to be street legal, at least in Massachusetts. We're talking about some vehicles, some of these bikes can go that fast, and one wheels and some of the other things, but a lot of them can't. And we're talking about forcing all of them, no matter what the speed limit of that road is, we're forcing them onto the street. And it always comes back to me to what is the safety issue? And that's a real problem, both for the drivers in terms of congestion and road rage that might result from that, but more so for the operator. And is that appropriate when there is another option? on only 21 of 231 miles or 260 miles of roads. For 31 miles, there's another option. I think we ought to let them use it. You know, signage, education, none of those things are going to solve the problem on their own, but together they might bring about better behavior. And I think that's what we're all after, is better behavior, better safety for the people on the paths, but also I think better safety for the community at large, and that's for the drivers too.
Even if they have any bike regulations,
Do they have bike regulations?
bike regulation,
I'm sure they do.
but none that you're off.
It wasn't obvious to me.
Well, that's why I gave you the specifications for these devices. And their color prints, and they were distributed, but every one of these devices is capable of doing between 22 and 40 miles an hour. Now, of course.
But that's not true. That's not true.
Well, I
Because
don't know
know
if
my
it's true or
e-bike
not.
can go up to 20 miles an hour, so
All
that's
I
not
can
true.
do is all I can do is tell you about the specifications for the vehicles that I mentioned in the article.
But those aren't the only ones affected by your article, Bruce.
I'm not sure I'm following you, but
No, what I'm saying is your article would affect my bike, which can only go a top speed of 20.
that's pretty fast.
Okay, well, his bike can go 20,
And no
And
motor.
I'm
and
pedaling.
he doesn't have two kids strapped on the back. I mean, I won't put two kids on the back of my bike that can go 20 miles an hour on the road. I just won't ride the bike anymore. And that's fine, but that's what a lot of people are gonna have to choose to do. Now, I have a car, so that's an okay option for me. Other
Mhm.
people don't have that option.
All right. Any other further conversation, discussion on this? So we'll table this to a future meeting and pick it up for a vote, you know, I guess towards the end of the process as we start voting on all these articles. Bruce, thank you again. Appreciate your input and all the work you put into this.
Just before we
Yeah.
leave it, I just, for the minutes, I want to request that we reach out to the BPAC and see if they have any formal thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think I think Denise did reach out to them. I misplaced her note to me that gave the name of the person, so I didn't know who to chase down. So, okay, good point. Our next meeting is Thursday, the 12th. We in this trailer again,
Yes.
Maria? Okay. Any,
And who is the presenter?
It's gonna be the Affordable Housing Revolver, Stabilization Fund, I'm sorry. It's Arthur Reed. Arthur Reed.
Arthur Reed, citizen
Yeah.
article.
Oh, okay.
okay,
Joe,
oh, yes, Libby.
sorry, what was that you just said about BPAC?
I thought I thought Denise had contacted BPAC and had asked somebody from that group to participate in this meeting, but I forgot about looking at my email, so I don't really know who it was.
Oh, okay, but okay, to have them comment?
Well, I think we would be good to have some comment from from the bicycle group about their view of traffic on the bike paths and how you might improve safety.
Yeah, even if it was an email, or just if they've had any formal discussion and as a group have an opinion on it.
Yeah, thanks. What about,
They probably hate electric bikes.
be interesting to hear from like Young's Bicycle or some of the other, anyway.
Thank you
Um,
very much for the opportunity to address the committee about this, and I would hope that the people at BPAC would have been made aware of their opportunity to speak at this meeting too. But it's always good to get feedback and ideas from people who want to help with this problem. So I just want to thank you all for your attention. I know I've bombarded you with research documents, hundreds and hundreds of pages and photos and whatnot. And I appreciate the fact that some of you or most of you have actually taken a look at it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Bruce, and thank you for all your hard work. Citizens committee reports. Anybody on any of the subcommittees have any comments you want to add or report?
I don't have an assignment, so no.
Okay,
Anything to comment on short-term rentals, Peter?
No, nothing's really happened since our last
Yeah, no,
discussion.
I had a meeting of the solid waste sort of group that I sit on with Brooke Moore and. Like, nothing that I think we need to share at this stage, so. And any other business? No?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned,
Second,
all in favor?
aye.
Aye. Jeremy?
Do
Any-
the roll call.
Oh, after. didn't do
Aye.
roll. Okay, Jeremy, and then everybody else by roll call. Aye. Steve,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Chris, Peter. Aye. Joe, aye. Okay,
Great, thank you.
thanks,
See you
guys.
Thursday.
Thank you, everybody. See ya.